The time has come for us to introduce our guest for tonight. Welcome to today's episode. The Feminine Genius meets Doc Octa with the theme How a Mathematician Helped in the Pandemic. This is Late Night with Dr. Ria Liza featuring Up Close and Personal with Professor Guido David. During the pandemic, he became very popular due to his group's scientific assistance to the IATF. Learn from a fellow of Octa Research, a professor of mathematics in the University of the Philippines Diliman, and an adjunct faculty with the ASEAN Institute of Management. He holds a Ph.D. in Biomedical Engineering, Masters of Science in Mathematics degree from Texas A&M University, and holds an MS in Actuarial Science from University of the Philippines. A board member of Remote Area Medical Philippines and CEO of Diliman Artificial Intelligence, a recipient of the Outstanding Young Scientist Award in 2010, and a co-host at the Pinoy Scientist Radio program of DZEC Radyo Agila 1062 kilohertz Metro Manila. Let us give a virtual applause to Professor Guido. This is ito na yung pinakamarami namin viewers for our live streaming. And I think everybody's excited to hear your story. And we will leave you muna. We give the spotlight muna sa iyo. We will listen to your story po. We're just here waiting patiently for your story. Okay, sir. So the floor is yours po.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the invite again, Dr. Ria, and sa viewers natin dito sa program, Feminine Henyo. I really apologize. I committed, but there was an emergency meeting, and I hope you understand. It was a really important meeting. I couldn't get out of it. I was out of it, pero mahinang signal kanina. So here I am. Yun nga, siguro kukwento ko lang quickly. Uh, Basically, the pandemic affected us and me the same way it affected you. So initially, well, as you know, I'm a professor. I teach at UP. I did my graduate studies at Texas A&M University in Texas, of course. I did my PhD there, and then I returned home, teach in UP. So just like any professor, I do research on applied mathematics, mathematical modeling, game theory, artificial intelligence, so among others. So stuff that has to do with mathematics. And then when the pandemic hit, like all of you, I was initially surprised no March 15 of 2020 that it was serious. And, we were actually having a lockdown. So first time in my life, we experienced something like that, a lockdown, an actual lockdown. And people were scared. People were panic buying in groceries. I remember that. People didn't know what was going on. They knew about this COVID, but they didn't think it was that serious. I didn't think it was that serious because we heard about the COVID even back in January, February, and so far, parang wala namang cases. And then suddenly, it turns out that the number of cases was higher than we thought it was, and that's why we had to go to lockdown. So, and I stayed in lockdown, but during that time, I was thinking of using my skills, my knowledge to do some modeling research on COVID, and it was a new well, I wouldn't call it a new science, but we have experience modeling diseases, for example, SARS, um, MERS, and other diseases, flu, etc. But some of the information was new, and so what I saw initially was that there were some projections being made, and this was in March of 2020. And I thought that some of the projections were a little too high for my taste. So I actually decided to write a paper and try to publish it because I'm a researcher. And I made some projections based on the model that I was working on. So I was working on a simplified model for making projections and making forecasts for the pandemic. And it was actually not a bad projection. So my first projection was made on, we published it on April 2020. And the projection for the number of cases, it was around 3,000 by that time, by April 8th. And then we projected about 30,000 in 2 months. And it was actually not far off because some of the other projections were seeing either 200,000 or so, and different using different methods. So there were some tweaks I made in the model, and based on that, it seemed like it was calibrated well for COVID modeling. So I started doing that, and it started becoming something regular. So I thought it was initially going to be just a one-time research paper, but in fact, it evolved into something, and we were constantly monitoring the COVID situation in the country, in NCR, in the provinces. And so it became something that was weekly. So we were doing weekly monitoring and submitting the reports through channels to the interagency task force and other, government institutions. And then, well, it started to get traction. First time it got real traction was around June of 2020. We made a prediction that was actually, you know, uh, fairly close to what was actually the number of cases, and then the media got wind of that, and then after that, well, even the government noticed it, and that was when uh, at that time spokesperson Harry Roque said, "Natalo natin yung UP because our projection was around 40,000 cases, but by the end of I think it was the end of July, we had about 37,000 cases. So we beat the UP because people were already noticing that our projections were fairly close. So they were using it as a benchmark to assess government performance. In reality, actually, we did not. The I mean, the country did not beat the projections because when we look at the actual number of cases, um, by July of 2020, it actually increased um, later to around 40,000. So yeah, but anyway, we're not trying to compete with anything. We're just using the projections as a guide for the public, and this is public service, and we're using it as a guide for the government, and businesses use the projections as guides as well for their planning. So we actually have seen, or we have predicted the surges. So the March surge of 2021, which was due to the alpha and beta, we actually saw that the increase happening. And then the delta surge, we also predicted that, and we saw it coming, even as other experts were saying that they were not seeing the surge yet. But we saw it all in its nascent stage, and it was evolving into something big, and we knew that it was big. The Omicron surge, it was very fast, so timing was very important. I mean, by December 24, we were not seeing the surge, but by December, like less than a week later, we were seeing significant um, spikes in cases, and that was when we actually reported that there was an increase going on. The difference, of course, was during the Omicron surge. There was already significant vaccination in the country, in the NCR. So there was no need for a strict lockdown. So it's what we call living with the virus. So, and the Filipinos actually were or were already um, used to the pandemic, so they knew what to do. So people stayed home, they get tested, they isolated if they felt symptoms, and now we're basically over the Omicron wave. It's downward. Yes, there's still some cases, but it's decreasing. Today's number of cases is about 1,200, um, and decreasing. So we are expecting that it will be less than 1,000 cases by next week. So I'm not sure what else I need to discuss honestly. So uh, so this is again, I'm very happy to be part of this program. I I wouldn't say I'm a feminist, but definitely I believe in women's rights, and I respect you know women's rights very much. And I mean, I think it would be better if we do more interaction, like if there are questions that you'd like to ask me. I don't know about, hopefully not about the methodology. I mean, we could go technical, um, but yeah. So well, maybe just to add some a few talking points. So yeah, I think I gave some background on what I did, but yes, my name is Guido David. I'm a professor of mathematics. I think there was an introduction already.